The continent of South America is one of the large land masses of the world, hot and tropical in the north, cold and arctic in the south. South America is only a part of a larger area called Latin America. This name reflects the nature of the people who settled here. The first explorers came from the Latin countries of Spain and Portugal, and it was they and their descendants who set the main pattern of life in South America. They weren't alone in creating the culture. There were many Indians living here before the white men came. During the next few centuries, people from Africa and Northern Europe also helped shape the pattern. There are 13 separate countries on the continent. They were all once colonies of European nations. Today, 11 of the 13 are independent republics. The other two, Suriname and French Guiana, are still associated with their original foreign governments. They are all democracies, but democracy can take many forms in Latin America. The amount of personal freedom and representation can vary greatly. On a continent as large as South America, there are naturally many kinds of land features and climates. Running the entire length of the continent is the great chain of the Andes. The high Andes, with peaks over 9,000 feet, extend 3,500 miles from northern Colombia and Venezuela to central Chile and Argentina. In the center of the continent, near the equator, is a massive area of tropical rainforest, which is still one of the world's most unknown and least inhabited areas. To the north and south of the rainforest are vast flat plains called savannas, grasslands which are a natural grazing area. At the southern tip of the continent, it is cold and dry on the eastern side of the Andes, cold and wet on the western slopes. Most people in South America live near the coasts. The vast interior is barely inhabited. When the Europeans first came to South America, their main object was to find precious metals and jewels. It was natural for them to have their bases near their ships. Much of South America is in the tropics. Because the coastal lowlands are hot, wet, and uncomfortable, new settlements were made in valleys high in the mountains, where even on the equator, the climate is mild and pleasant. Most of the large cities today are high in the mountains, but still quite close to the sea. Catholic monks accompanied the first explorers and were charged with the responsibility of converting the natives. Although not as strong a force as in colonial times, Roman Catholicism is still the universal religion of South America. In their conversion process, the Indians brought some of the qualities of their own culture to the new faith. When the Spanish and Portuguese adventurers came to South America, they were rewarded by being given large tracts of land that have often remained in the same families even to this day. To be wealthy was to own land. It was not necessary for the land to be productive. To own it was enough. While much of the rest of the world moved into the industrial age and a faster tempo of life, South America remained bound in an endless circle in which the rich remained rich and the poor remained poor. The ownership of land brings security, but the ownership of capital brings power. South America is now moving from a pre-industrial society into an industrial age. It is not easy. The old ways of dress, the old ways of doing things, change slowly. This new way of life has not come easily to South America. In Europe and North America, the industrial society grew gradually. There is a balance between the cities, the suburbs, and the country. In South America, the modern world has come to the cities only, and it has come rapidly. It is in the cities that people band together to create the new society. To leave most cities is to drop back in time hundreds of years. The contrast between city and countryside is enormous. In Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador, more than half the population is Indian. Indians are living in the great forests of the Amazon and on the plateaus of the high Andes. Their way of life has remained unchanged for thousands of years. When the Spaniards came, they found the great Inca Indian civilization in the Andes. The Incas were a proud people. As the invaders moved inland from the coast, the last of the Incas retreated to the highlands of the Andes. In the high mountain valleys, their descendants live today as if the Spaniards had never come. Many Indians cannot speak Spanish, which is the official language of their country. In their turn, the governments have acted as if the Indians simply didn't exist. The highland Indians live simply, and they live poorly. Remote villages have none of the basic comforts that much of the world has long come to expect. Now, at last, changes are being made. Peru has begun a massive program of fundamental education for the Indians. The object will not be to make them part of the Hispanic society of the country. Instead, it will try to make them participating citizens without sacrificing their own special qualities. When the Spanish and Portuguese came, many of them married native Indians. It is their descendants, called mestizos, who form the largest single group on the continent. Mestizos can be found at every level of society, and it is they who are likely to be political leaders in the South American country. 1/5 of the people in South America are of purely European ancestry. Most of these are in Chile and Argentina, which also have immigrants from other parts of the world. Negroes were brought to the New World to work in the hot tropical lowlands along the northern coast and in tropical Brazil. Today, in Colombia and Venezuela, the blacks still live on the coast, and in many ways have kept themselves removed from the mainstreams of their countries. In Brazil, there is a different situation. Brazil is one of the few countries that has had a successful integration of races. People of every shade of color coexist with little prejudice. There is not the question of black or white as in the United States, but rather how black or how white. It is a good situation, but not a perfect one. A very dark person is rarely found in a high position in government or in business. And in the slums that surround all large cities, most of the people are dark. South America is an underpopulated continent. There are vast areas with almost no people. A few countries, like Argentina, have reached a point of zero population growth. But Argentina is an exception. Most of the continent is in a period of rapid population growth. For many countries, this is a dangerous situation. They can hardly feed the existing people, and now much of the population is too young to contribute to the economy. At least half the people in South America live at a subsistence level. That is, they provide for themselves and their families, but they contribute nothing to the national economy. The continent is rich in natural resources, but it takes capital to develop them, and capital has always been short in South America. In the past, much of the money needed to start business or to develop natural resources has come from foreign investors. This has been both a blessing and a curse. Without capital, nothing could be achieved. But with foreign investment, much of the profits have been removed from the countries which were the source of the wealth. In the past, many of the managers and technicians were also foreign. Foreign investment has also helped to maintain the so-called one-crop economies. That is, a dependence upon a single crop or natural resource. If a whole country depends on a single product, it is at the mercy of world markets. A slight drop in world prices can be devastating. In South America, some of these single products have been coffee in Colombia and Brazil, tin in Bolivia, bananas in Ecuador, and oil in Venezuela. Certainly, all countries would like to have a diversified economy with a balance between agriculture and manufacturing. They would like to have a situation in which most of the people were productive contributors to the economy, and in return would receive education and other benefits from the government. In South America, these goals are hard to achieve, but there is some progress. It is too simple to say, nationalize all foreign investments. This has been done, of course, but it has rarely worked out well for anyone. In Chile, the copper mines must never stop producing, or the economy, and therefore the government, would almost certainly collapse. In Venezuela, the oil wells must continue to flow. What seems to be the most successful way to become financially independent is gradually to bring foreign-owned interests into the national economy. When this is done, native managers and technicians can be trained. The foreign investors still receive a return, but eventually all the profits remain within the country for future capital investment. As the gradual nationalization proceeds, there is always sufficient capital available to maintain production. As the national economy becomes stronger, new needs are created and new industries arise. This has happened in only a few countries, such as Brazil, and Venezuela. But the trend has started. They are saying in South America that this will be the continent of the future.